Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo's virtual meeting featuring Rotarian Lisa McDuffie. Racism is a public health crisis, the Toledo Black Agenda. But before we get started, I'll invite Chuck Mann to deliver a reflection and new Rotarian Rodney Eason to lead us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
This prayer comes from the YWCA World Week of Prayer as presented on November 13th through the 19th of 2016. Please know that there's a place where we will pause to silently remember those that we honor and thank. Let us pray. God, you are gracious. You bring us together with varied responsibilities and gifts. You challenge us to respond to your call. Sustain us and help us to sustain each other. We offer our thanks and ask mercy as we silently remember those people in our lives who we admire and to whom we owe gratitude. We give thanks for all that is good. We give thanks to you, loving Creator, and for those who make your love known to all of us, we give thanks. Amen.
Okay, let's all remember to unmute, and for those of you who can stand, let's stand. Okay, together. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag, United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I'll ask past President George Eistetter to review the Rotary Code of Conduct with us. George?
As you look at the Rotary magazine, I don't know if you caught the fact that they changed the name of the magazine recently. A slight change from the Rotarian to Rotary. And in there, I urge you to read that magazine because it has a ton of excellent information. And one of these I'm going to read off for us today. It is the Rotary Code of Conduct. And it says, as a Rotarian, I will, 1, act with integrity and high ethical standards in my personal and professional life. 2, deal fairly with others and treat them and their occupations with respect. 3, use my professional skills through Rotary to mentor young people, help those with special needs, and improve people's quality of life in my community and in the world. 4, avoid behavior that reflects adversely on Rotary or other Rotarians. And 5, not seek special business or professional advantages from other Rotarians. And there's one more that wasn't on there, and that is help maintain a harassment-free environment in Rotary meetings, events, and activities. Report any suspected harassment and help ensure non-retaliation to those individuals that report harassment. Thank you very much, gang.
All right, George. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That may be the first time that's ever been recited at Rotary.
Yep, we're setting records all over the place. That's fantastic. I also want to thank Walker Funeral Home, February's weekly meeting sponsor. Thank you, Rotarian Derek Leck. As far as some of my updates, I've got a few updates to take care of. First, regarding future meeting announcements, they're typically referenced on the bottom of page 1 of the spoke. as well as on our website, toledorotary.org. And then finally, everybody receives a meeting reminder Monday morning. Usually it hits our inbox before we even get up. And if you're not receiving these, please contact the Rotary office and they will help you. Again, it has the link to the meeting, maybe some other important reminders. Having said all that, okay, our Monday meeting the week of March 8th has been changed to Tuesday, March 9th, when we will introduce Senator Rob Portman at noon, again on March 9th. So now's when I pause and everybody goes through their calendar, takes a few minutes, make the change from Monday the 8th to Tuesday the 9th at noon.
I feel very fortunate to have had the ability to represent Ohio in the Senate, and that the people of Ohio have been willing to entrust me with that responsibility. I'm not going to run again in 2022, but I've got 2 more years in my term, and I'm going to continue to work very hard for the people of Ohio. And I think we'll get a lot done, as we always have. We have been successful in getting things done by, focusing on results and working across the aisle. And
all right. Thank you for that, Senator Rob Portman. So if you haven't made that change in your calendar, okay, I promise you, you'll show up on Monday, March 8th to a blank screen, okay, which is similar to driving to the parking lot and remembering there was no meeting that day. So I think everybody's done that. Also for that meeting, with Senator Portman, we're partnering with the Maumee Rotary Club, and we're inviting all surrounding clubs to join us that day. So a very special day, Tuesday, March 9th at noon. Another item, our club's ad hoc committee continues to participate in the Lucas County V Project. And on Monday, March 1st, so that's the next Monday, past President Tom Backoff will give us a full update. For now, check out page 3 on Thursday Spoke for new information on how the United Way's 211 is helping our community gain access to the COVID vaccine. And also, please remember to send us your selfie when you receive the vaccine so we can showcase all of our members in the Spoke newsletter. I want to mention also just quickly, we received some directive from Rotary International that all clubs are supposed to be meeting virtually through the balance of the Rotary year. So that's through June 30th. However, I want you to know that our club is planning or is in the planning phase to hold some events and some outdoor meetings in the spring. Okay, so details will be forthcoming. Please know that I want us to get together safely as soon as humanly possible. And now here's Rotarian Jill Blackburn, co-chair of the Membership Engagement Committee, for a short message.
Hello, President Alex and fellow Rotarians. I hope this message finds you safe and well. I'm hoping that everybody received a little treat in the mail. We wanted to make sure, as President Alex said, I am part of the Membership Engagement Committee. And in this time of COVID and not being able to see everyone in person, we wanted to get a little treat out to everyone. If you haven't gotten it, hopefully you will be receiving it shortly. We wanted it to come during the month of February to reach out to everyone as a touch point and letting you know that you're on our minds, in our hearts, and thinking of you. Hoping that everybody and your families are staying safe. And also just as a thank you for your dedication and your time to Toledo Rotary. And we wanted you all to know that we are trying to come up with ideas, both virtually and, as President Alex mentioned, hopefully something in person that will be socially distant and respectful for everyone coming in the spring. So we wanted to let you know we're thinking of you. Hopefully you enjoyed your treat, and please stay tuned. We will be getting information out as we are able to put something together for everyone. Back to you.
Thank you, Jill. Very, very well said. And finally, here is Kurt Church, Chair of the Peace Committee, to introduce today's speaker. Kurt?
Thank you, President Alex. It is my pleasure to introduce Miss Lisa McDuffie, fellow Toledo Club Rotarian. Lisa received her bachelor's degree from Findlay College. She then went on to Case Western Reserve University to receive a master's in science and social administration. Lisa has a 25-year career with the YWCA, and she confided in me that she was the first African-American to be appointed to such a position within the YWCA. She oversees services in 20 county area with over 100 employees. Under her leadership, in 2018, a new transitional house, which serves up to 18 women who have endured domestic violence, was opened. She also oversaw a $10 million apartment complex that housed formerly homeless women and children. The YWCA uses its mission-driven statement of eliminating racism and empowering women in all its programs, ranging from domestic violence shelters, rape crisis centers, teen pregnancy prevention, child care resources, youth development, and infant vitality. The YWCA is a strong advocate and leads community efforts in marches, voter registration, legislative initiatives, and a dialogue for change, which is a curriculum aimed at discussing racism. Lisa is a sought-after member of numerous boards, including boards with ProMedica, board member of Connecting Kids to Meals, board member of CareNet, board member of Toledo Museum of Arts, Health Equity Chair with Healthy Lucas County, Chair of the Regional Prevention Council to End Child Abuse for the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, Advocacy Chair for the Ohio Council of the YWCAs, an active member of the Toledo chapter of the Links Incorporated, and an Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated member. How do you find time to do all of that board work? Holy mackerel. Lisa resides in West Toledo with her husband, George, of 33 years, and making that last 33 years is a whole nother topic that could last a whole Rotary program. She has two adult daughters, Victoria, who is following in her footsteps, who's 26 with a master's in social work, and her daughter, Brittany, who's 22 and graduated this last May of 2020 with a bachelor's in biology and pre-med. With that, Lisa, I'll hand it to you for today's program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kurt. And I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. President Alex and fellow Rotarian, it's my pleasure to be here today. I want to spend just 2 seconds and give a quick shout out to Kurt and the rest of the members of the Peace Committee. It is their effort and hard work that saw fit to bring me forward as your speaker today. You heard in my introduction, as long as it was, that I have actually been at the helm of the YWCA for 25 years. I've been a member of this Rotary Club for as long as I can remember, but I need to begin today's conversation being really, really honest. The fact of the matter is, many years ago, when I was a Rotarian, this was a bit of a struggle for me. Looking at a sea of mostly white males, being one of the only people of color, oftentimes came to be a little overwhelming. When I sat down after the wonderful salad bar that many of us have come to enjoy, I always sat at a table purposely to get to know someone differently. Many people were nice, extremely cordial, but almost immediately they would say, "Oh, where are you from, Lisa?" And I would say the YWCA. Many people would get us mixed up with that other organization that starts with a Y. And they would quickly say, "Which branch are you from?" And of course I would go on to say that the YM is a fabulous organization, but I represent the YWCA. We are very, very different. We work to ensure not only gender equity, but race equity. Oftentimes, that sentence in itself killed it for me. It was not an interesting conversation. It was not something that folks had a tendency to ask me to elaborate. And instead, very conveniently, they asked me to pass them the water or the cookies or something like that. I chose, as a result of just having the difficulty of the running an agency and being able to balance some of the things that Kurt mentioned that I'm involved in, to drift away. Not because Rotary was not doing fabulous work, but I believed that it was not necessarily the place for me. It was Kurt and Candace who extended an olive branch, who said, we have this fabulous, fabulous president. We have a great initiative in front of us. We've started a peace committee. It is time to bring you back. And with that, I am here after, again, 25 years of being a part of the club. This is my first opportunity to speak in front of you. So I want you to know how very gracious I am with the opportunity. My understanding is that the Rotary, just like many in this community as well as in the country, are ready to have a serious but yet difficult conversation on racism. You know, I don't fault folks for not wanting to talk about this. It is painful, it is difficult. Oftentimes people don't know what to say, how to say it. I get it, I totally get it. But the mere fact that 111 people have tuned in really sends a strong message that we at least want to have the conversation. So thank you for that. I'm gonna tee up my PowerPoint now and talk to you a little bit about the Toledo Black Agenda. And as I'm doing that, I will tell you that the Toledo Black Agenda really came together from somewhat of a dream. I too witnessed a police officer really hold down a Black man as a result of what the rumor was in terms of news, a counterfeit $20 bill. For 8 minutes and 26 seconds, I think the world stopped. And clearly so did the heart of Mr. Floyd. That night, I tossed and turned, really was troubled for many, many reasons. But the next morning, I got up, made a phone call to my colleague, Robin Reese from Lucas County Children's Services, amongst a few other folks, and said, you know, I believe this is the time. This is different than any other time that's ever happened. And I'm thinking about calling together Black leaders of our community. And they embraced it. Robin, bless her heart, said, I will stand with you. Members of the NAACP also said, I'll stand with you. And within 2 days, we had formed about 40 Black leaders in this community. And our goal was fairly simple. One, foremost and most important, it was important to check in. It was a difficult time for us to see George Floyd, but at the same time, many of us know all too well that George Floyd could have been our sons, our husbands, our nephews, and even in recent news, even our mothers, our daughters, and our sisters. We've seen it all too many times. So it was important for us as community leaders, all of which were mostly professionals, to have a safe space in order to just let our hair down, in order for us to just vent and really share the pain that we saw when the police officer had kneeled him down. And very quickly, after we were able to get that out, I put out a call to action. Not sure if you were aware, but our city and our county both had declared racism a public health crisis. the same race crises had also been declared all across our country. And in having conversations, what we recognized right away is that we had done everything we needed to do. I'm gonna advance my slide to the next screen.
I think you went backwards.
Oops,
Hey, Lisa.
I did. Marla's
Lisa.
helping me here.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. We can see the tile view of your slides, but not the presentation view.
Okay, say it again.
So we don't see the full presentation view. So in the bottom of your screen, you'll see like a icon, like a grid, and then like a book, and then there's a presentation screen. If you click on that screen, it should take it full screen.
Oh, I think you hit pause.
Is that better?
No.
Okay, Marla, come in and help us.
I know, it says you're sharing. It was on pause.
I'm gonna stop your sharing, Lisa.
Yes, that would be perfect.
And the moment I did that, it clicked in. So go one more time. Let's share the screen and just make sure you're selecting the presentation view.
There we
That's
go.
great.
Is that
Thank you.
better?
Yep. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh no, I'm glad you did. Glad you did. So all right. So let me try to pick this back up. So after the Toledo City Council and the Lucas County Commissioners had declared racism a public health crisis, we also recognized that the words on a piece of paper were extremely important, but it was more important for us to have a plan on how we were going to help bring this issue of racism as a public health crisis to the forefront. Get to the next one. And so we started off with making sure everyone was on the same page. What exactly is a public health crisis? And according to definition, it really has three pivotal marks. Something that is of significant impacts to the community's health. And so in just a little while, I'll talk about really health inequity. I'll talk about really just the ability to live and how it affects the Black community. The second prong is something that affects the life expectancy. And again, there are a ton of statistics that support that the mere fact of being Black, there are several chronic diseases that plague our community. There are other environmental issues that also affect the life expectancy. And there are even some startling statistics that support the stress of racism having an impact on one's life and ability to live. And the third prong is the economy. And I'll spend just a little time talking about the economic impact of racism. But the bottom line is all of that together equals structural racism. And it has affected the health of Black people in their lives for over 400 years. So our group spent time really talking about what a world without racism looks like. We began to talk about the criminal justice system. We talked about education. We talked about health. By the time we were done, we had just pages and pages of issues that we knew needed attention in order to really get to the heart of systemic racism. After we labeled it all there, we began to compartmentalize things, and we ended up with 6 pillars. We knew, for an example, that food deserts were important and insecurities in terms of where people are going to find their meals, but we knew we can kind of park that under health. And so as a result, we ended up with 6. So let me just kind of quickly run through some of the information. Time is not going to allow me to cover every single element, but I want to just kind of hit some of the high notes. It is not a secret that Black people have long suffered under the hands of law enforcement, from the institution of slavery and all the way to even the history of slave patrols and night watchers. Both of these entities were meant to control the behavior of Black people. And once slave patrols were ended, there was a new law that was known as Black codes. Those codes were adopted and really dictated how, when, and where Black people could work and how much they could make. They restricted voting rights and where people could live. After the Black codes, they were replaced with Jim Crow laws. For 80 years, Black people lived under the rules of where they could go and what they could do. They pretty much had mandates on public spaces for Black people and for white people in terms of schools, libraries, water fountains, and even restaurants, and the ability to ensure that Black people behaved was the job of law enforcement. If you violated even something as simple as talking back, directly looking a white person in the eye, you oftentimes were forced to endure police brutality. There are any number of statistics that support why there needs to be attention in this area. A Black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without cause than a white person. This next statistic is even more startling to me. Okay, the 6th leading cause of death for men between the ages of 25 and 29 across all racial groups has to do with police and their brutality. This next statistic is so confusing for many people. It is a true known fact that white people are killed by police more than any other race. But while white people make up over 60% of the population, 41% is next to fatal shootings. Black people make up 13%, but yet fatal police shootings are 22%. When we looked at the statistics, we all knew that there were really strong rules around racial profiling, even here in our own community. It is not to be tolerated. But there was a part of the rules, even in our community, that spoke to criminal profiling, not to be confused. Our police forces are allowed to stop individuals if they believe there is room for any element of suspicion of any illegal activity. So when we start talking about unconscious bias and who you see that looks suspicious, it is no surprise, especially for Black people, that people see us as immediately threatening. It is the mere fact that if a person is walking around with a Black hoodie, that they are up to something. It speaks to a Black man jogging, and automatically people assume he's running from something. We have lost lives as a result of criminal profiling. Black men are arrested 45% to 26% to white men. And the juvenile court system is following very, very close. Black males account for 47% of the arrests, and Black females, 26%. This is a terrible, terrible statistic. 1 out of every 3 Black boys born today can expect to be sentenced to prison. Now, personally, I don't think 1 out of 17 for white boys is any worse. both of them equally should be stopped. And so there are some people who believe that the reason why Black people are sitting in prisons today is because for some reason we are prone to criminal activity. But when you look at statistics that tell you about drug use, 5% of illicit drug users are Black. But Black people represent 29% of those arrested and 33% of those incarcerated for drug offenses. Statistics will also tell us that Blacks and whites use drugs at similar rates, but the imprisonment rate of Black people for drug charges is almost 6 times that of whites. Let me move on to the economic justice. The median net wealth for a white family is $171,000 compared to $17,600. It is a very, very startling bit of information when we look at even how things translated in our own state as well as in our own county. The household income for white families is $50,700, and the average income for a Black family in our community is $22,700. We already know it is extremely important to not only rebuild and reinvest in the backbone of the Black community, but if we are really serious, we have to do something to close the wage gap between Black and white Americans. It is important to make sure that there are pipelines available for all types of professions and trades that will help close this gap. From education, we already know that enslaved Black people were discouraged, and we already knew that it was illegal in most of the southern states to even learn to read and write. We had laws that were passed that really ruled out segregation and found it unconstitutional, but yet even to today, we still see residential segregation. You know, I'll do a plug right now for Toledo Public Schools. Toledo Public Schools, like most public institutions, have a heavy lift in front of them. Not only do they rely on property taxes, but they rely really on the stewardships of individuals coming in to help them with all the tasks that are in front of them. They continue to suffer with digital divide in the way they are able to educate our kids. They don't have the best textbooks and all of the other things that many of the burbs do. It is important that we invest in our kids. There's statistics here that talk about 4,000 four-year-olds, and nearly the majority of them are already living below the federal poverty line. We already know that in Ohio, we are behind in terms of publicly funding universal pre-K, but it's extremely important to know that universal pre-K is nonpartisan. It is worth the investment to help our kids. And I'm gonna move very quickly through this so that there is adequate time to ask questions, but the healthcare piece was also extremely troubling for many of us the more we began to research. There's a wonderful quote that is on the screen by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is one of the most shocking and the most inhuman. You know, you wanna know why? Well, we already know when you're not healthy, it is difficult to get up and even put one foot in front of the other. We already know that it's difficult to work when you're not feeling well, but if the fact of the matter is for most Black Americans that are working 1, 2, and sometimes 3 jobs, needing to care for family and not having adequate recess, all really connects to their ability to parent. And so health is important. You know, there are statistics here that, again, are extremely startling that we felt the need to put into our document. The fact that Black children are almost 3.5 times more likely to die within 30 days of surgery over white kids. We don't understand that. We seriously don't. And why is that we have the highest mortality rate of all cancers? Okay, we start thinking about really statistics even in our own community. The fact that over 19% of our community lives in poverty. The poorest amongst us are women between the ages of 18 and 34. You know, health is important, just as education is important, just as the state of the economics is important, but housing is a basic need. And we already know about the historical redlining and all the predatory lending issues that came up that disinvested in the Black community. We already know that there are over 1,000 children aged 6 and younger that have been confirmed with blood levels higher than what the CDC has as their own threshold. And it's estimated that over 3,500 children are now suffering lifelong permanent disabilities that result in lead poisoning. Why is that the issue? The majority of Black families in our community are renters. They personally can't remedy the lead issue. We already know that Black Toledoans are denied conventional loan applications more than any other race. We know that single mothers are evicted over many other races. And between the years of 2000 and 2017, we lost 770,000 Black homeowners. We have a crisis on our hands. But if you don't look at what's happening, even with the wage gap that's happening in our workforce, we'll miss something. During this economic crisis, African Americans are the first to shed their jobs. We already know that most of them are working in vulnerable situations. They are essential staff, and they are sacrificing their lives every single day so that we have food in our refrigerators, so that we have folks that are taking care of our loved ones in the nursing homes and in the hospitals. They're driving our buses, they're Uber drivers, they are all those things that are essential. But yet we continue to suffer with the gap. I threw up a statistic just because you know I'm also equally about gender equity. But a Black woman is paid 61 cents to every dollar for her white counterpart. Over a difference of a 40-year career, that's an earnings of $946,000 compared to her white counterpart. That is regardless of her education, location, age, and it is the same in terms of a low-paying or a high-paying job. Workforce in all of the pillars we put together equals systemic racism. It is much more than racial prejudice, hatred, and discrimination. It involves a systemic discrimination that is embedded in our institutional policies and procedures. Many people want to know, how do we fix it? Well, guess what? It's not one pillar at a time. It takes us collectively coming together and addressing the systemic roots of all of these things and being really prepared to tackle them. You know, many people believe the corporate statements really is all was needed. I applaud you for your corporate statements, but we need more than words on a paper. We also need to say and be really realistic with ourselves. It takes more than attending a Rotary session and hearing me talk about it. It takes more than attending a seminar or even a couple of seminars. Systemic racism is almost as deep and as long as you are old. It came from relatives that have put things in the minds of white people. It came from textbooks, it came from our media and the way it displayed people of color. And it is our job to recognize that the best way to really conquer this is to come out, to be able to have a conversation, to make sure there's courageous space in order to do that, and to begin to think about what are things that you can do to help move this needle. Being able to address systemic racism is beyond being a good person. We've heard that way too many times, you know, I'm good, it's not me. And, you know, all of the racist things that have plagued the Black and Brown community is not one individual. It is true there are racist actors, but what we are talking about are the very bedrock, the very fabric of our community. So good people, just like Black and Brown people, need to come together and figure out the ways to salute this. And being good does not necessarily qualify by saying you have Black friends or Brown friends. And it goes well beyond even hiring people of color. You know, there's a really great piece that I'll share with you. There are some people who say, you know, it's important to hire people of color. But I say it's important to make sure you've created a culture that is welcoming, that makes them feel like they belong. What good is being invited to the dance if no one asks you to dance? What good is being invited to the dance if no one has checked to make sure you like the music, you like the food, and you've had no say so? So it is important for you to recognize that diversity and inclusion means not only bringing them in, but asking their opinions, putting them at your tables, and even making sure that the culture is ready for a culture of belonging. Here's a call to action. You know, I've shared a couple of things that I think is really, really important, but I would also take it just one step further and say, I encourage you to check out the YWCA website. There are any number of resources that are there for you and your staff and your family members. They are age appropriate even for children. But at the same time, I want to extend an invitation for you to participate in what will newly be announced to our community called Toledo Equity Inclusion Council. There's a group of leaders that are working with me to really put that off, and it'd be my hope that you will be watching for that announcement and prepared to join with us. And then last but not least, I would love to just invite you to participate in the YWCA 21-Day Racial Equity Social Justice Challenge. It is very simple. It is a free tool that is really created to provide just a way to increase your racial justice muscle. A email will come to you in your email. It will have a link to an article. It may have a link to a podcast or even examples of what you can do in terms of reflection. But if we are ready to accept this challenge, the YWCA is happy to lead us in the way. It is my pleasure to again tell you how very happy I was that you've allowed me this opportunity to share this information with you. And anytime, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is assigned, as well as our website. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kurt.
Thanks very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. Before we get into the Q&A, I'd like to talk a little bit further about the 21-day racial equity and social justice challenge. The Peace Committee has decided to turn this challenge into a service project and invite you all to participate. You will, as Lisa described, receive an email daily with different topics associated with this challenge. Depending on the amount of time you have in your workday in order to participate, you can read something, listen to a podcast, or dive deeper into the contents as it relates to each topic. To make this service project more interesting, it starts March 1st, goes through March 29th. The following Mondays, the 8th, the 15th, well, maybe the 9th now, since we've changed our meeting from Monday, March 8th to Monday, March 9th. And then the 22nd At 11 o'clock, we will have a facilitated conversation related to the previous week's topics that will be facilitated by Janet Hales and Lisa McDuffie. Please join us for that. We'd love to have as many people participate as can or are interested to, and please consider doing it and taking the time to learn more as we move forward with this project. Thanks very much. We'll go into Q&A, and I've seen some things come through the chat. And I think the first one I saw was from George Eistetler. So he has a comment he'd like to make. George, to you, sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
I have two comments. One, I've heard for a long time that we have a shortage of man or woman power in the building trades in this area, welders, pipe fitters, etc. And I wonder if anything has been done to try to lead some people, a minority, to those positions. That's my first question. And my second one is, you present these statistics, and let me just make one up here, that blacks are arrested 40% and the whites 20%. And I agree that there's some prejudice on behalf of police officers. But to me, it would be much more leading if we were able to discount those prejudice circumstances so that the 40% might be something lower than 40. Those are my questions and comments.
So thank you for your question, George. So to your first question about trades and different opportunities that will certainly speak to not only the wage gap, but also the wealth gap. You are absolutely right. Part of the work we are looking to do in the newly formed Toledo Equity Inclusion Council will look for ways that we can directly plug people of color into those type of opportunities. There's also been some talk in really the recognition that we know we need to start much younger with high school kids and even being able to create some paid internships and connect them directly to some of the corporations that are there. I don't want to talk too much and give it all away, but those are things that we've been talking about in our small group as we started putting the structure together. So I can tell you to look forward to that information. We certainly, more importantly, will be looking to engage the public and the private sector alongside community as we begin to roll some of those endeavors out. And I think to your second question, if I understand it just in terms of the way the statistics are really displayed, the whole point of really what the Unification Committee was attempting to do was connect issues that we found here in our own community with issues that happen on a national level as well as even in our state. And so when you began to look at the data, because it is really all in the numbers, you know, we can sit here and say we feel one way versus another, but when you look at numbers, numbers tell the true story. And so there's really no manipulating and changing the way we share the numbers. It's all in the way we attack it and begin to dismantle issues that we know that are building up the statistic and the disparity amongst the numbers in the first place. So I'm not sure that I specifically answered your question, but it's about the best I can do in terms of being able to really display the numbers in such a way that it tells an adequate story.
Thank you, Lisa. I think the next, actually a comment from Bob Savage, President Alex. Bob asked if we could have these slides distributed to the members. Is that okay with you, Lisa?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know, I think Walter McGee has it, so Kathy probably has it as well. So if that's all right with you.
Right, and Kurt, I would love to drive people to the YWCA website where you can see and read at your leisure the entire Toledo Black agenda. It's 52 pages, so it'll take you just a little bit of time to read, but the slides that I even ran through today is just a snippet of the information that was found.
While you brought up the YWCA website, I'll just piggyback with that and say you can find under the events tab on the YWCA website, you'll see the 21-day challenge where you can sign up. Oh, thanks, Kevin. Perfect. You can sign up for the 21-day challenge that starts March 1st at that location, which through the spoke on the website and possibly maybe even social media, Kevin, Facebook, LinkedIn, where we can invite other community members to participate as well. I do have another question from Maria White. So Maria, if you can unmute yourself, please go ahead. If you're still here.
I am here, Kurt. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Lisa, thank you so much for your presentation. It was wonderful. And I want to just make a quick comment before asking my question. And that is that if you, to the Rotary members, if you have not yet seen the Netflix documentary called 13th, it is something you should definitely watch, and it will give you some additional background information about much of the information that Lisa spoke of. Lisa, my question for you is that recently I've been hearing a lot of comments that say, why are we so focused on Black Lives Mattering? Don't all lives matter? How would you respond to someone that said that to you?
Thank you so much, Maria. It's actually a great question. And it's one that in the very beginning when I was planning this presentation, I actually had in, but I thought I was going to run out of time. So I thank you for bringing this forward. The fact of the matter is Black Lives really is a movement that is there to build awareness on many of the statistics that I just shared with you. The disproportionality of the number of Black people that are killed in the hands of law enforcement, the number of chronic diseases that plague our communities, some of which are as a result of environmental racism, some as a result of not having access to good quality foods, not having the money to purchase them, not having the ability to even provide adequate supports for family. And so when we start talking about Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that it's only Black lives. And so it became political and people took it out of context. What we're saying is we matter as much as everybody else. And if you cannot turn an eye and recognize that this is an epidemic and that a whole race is in genocide. We're dying off. And for the most part, no one is seeming to care except those folks who are losing loved ones. And so when the movement started, it was really only about that and bringing attention to what needs to happen to change these really atrocities from happening in our community. It has spun, as I said, into many other themes, but it's really Black lives should matter too. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Maria. Next up, Tim Ryan has a question. Please unmute yourself, Tim.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Lisa, it's nice to see you, even if it's remotely.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation today, and I want to just ask you a couple things. I think you've answered my question. It's going to be about maternity in the African American community. We've talked about education and healthcare and food deserts and all that, but I understand some of the statistics which I didn't hear from you are just horrendous in terms of mortality rate amongst mothers and infants.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And on the slide deck, there's actually a couple of statistics that I, again, just because of the sake of time, I glossed over, but there are startling statistics that talk about women in childbearing and the fact that we die more than any other race, and it's also connected to infant mortality and the fact that Black babies are dying more than any other race. In Cleveland, I'll tell you the statistic for babies is 7 times that of white babies. And, you know, again, I'm from really the era of looking at all things equal. And I believe we should be concerned about losing babies, period. No babies in our modern day should not have a chance for life. And if we even approach our health concerns from that perspective, it is my belief that we will begin to again root out some of those very reasons why Black mothers are losing their lives. Because again, we have all type of modern technology that should be able to detect, you know, crises and stress for a mom, but yet they're going in and they're not leaving there alive. So again, it's a startling fact that we have issues of disparity. But again, I would just encourage you to read the Toledo Black Agenda, our health pillars. Donnie Miller and Wendy Huntley did a fabulous job bringing out the facts, again, that really talk about the disproportionality amongst Black people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's a question from Dan Pienta. Hopefully I said your last name correctly, Dan, which mirrors a question that came in through Facebook Live from Montrese Terry. So Dan, if you're there and still on, you're up with your question, sir.
Let me get unmuted. There we go. Can you hear me?
There
all right?
you go.
All right. Lisa, thanks so much for presenting. It was really fantastic. Really appreciate your time today. My question was around, you know, as business owners, we have a lot of influence on, you know, our own associates, our suppliers, our partners out there. And, you know, what could we be doing differently to get the message out that we need to be looking at the community from a different point of view? Because I think you're spot on. And, you know, 5 years ago, I wasn't thinking the way I am today. And I look out there and I see a lot more of what you speak, and it breaks my heart. And it's like, how do we change people's hearts and minds in a way that's effective so that 5 years from now, we're having a much different conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, I'll answer it from a couple of different perspectives, Dan. You know, as business leaders and even owners of your companies, the culture really is a top-down approach. And so when the CEOs and the leaders reflect the diversity that is really needed, it begins to take bite. And that really means that not only are you looking at individuals that are working alongside of you, your C-suite, your executive VP line, but also your boards of directors, all the way down to your workers, and making sure that you are actively recruiting and working to retain talent that reflects really the composition of our community. Part of that, again, is recruitment and being able to make sure you are extending those branches in segments where folks of color are able to see it. Doing some deliberate outreach in order to grab them, and even training. But I mentioned this earlier, again, it's more than just hiring, you know, Black and brown folks. It really is. It really is creating a culture that is all inclusive, that embraces difference. You know, for the longest time, and again, this is in the historical nature, and it's well documented, Black people's voices have been silent. And in order to empower many of them to advocate for themselves, it means that there's this allowance of not only inviting them in, but empowering them to have a say-so and really their life and their ability to achieve something more than what they see in front of them. So there's all types of things that I think as a community, and we are forward thinking, we are thought leaders in the way we approach things, and we've done some fabulous things. I'm just really optimistic that, again, with folks like yourself, Dan, other business leaders and the private sector joining forces with the community, will be able to put this together in such a way that we're really going to change the lives for Toledoans. I want to make one point, and I know we're getting close to time. No one has asked this question, so I'm going to put it out there. When I am talking about Black Americans, the main reason, the only reason I'm saying Black is because of why we came together. But in all honesty, interchangeably with Black are people of color. So I am just as much looking to make sure that there is a better life for our Latinx and, you know, any of our other populations of color as we are Black. But the catalyst for our movement was because of George Floyd. And that's why it was done by Black people for Black people.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you very much, Lisa. There are many more questions, but unfortunately we have run out of time, as Lisa has mentioned. If you want to continue this conversation, sign up for the 21-day challenge. We are going to be having more opportunity to discuss these topics. And at the conclusion, which I failed to mention previously, we will have another discussion to wrap up the entire process of the 21-day challenge, a post service project discussion. So thanks very much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Alex, President Alex. Thank you very much again, Lisa.
Yes, Lisa, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you very much for a dynamic and thought-provoking presentation. And also thanks to our Peace Committee for the 21-day challenge service project. As our gift to you, we'll be sending you a well-known book in Toledo, The Historical Tales of Toledo, authored by Rotary past president Clint Mock. Also, we'll make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name. And again, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us. More to come on this topic. So next meeting, March 1st, Stephanie Beebe of the City of Toledo Lead Abatement Program. Following today's meeting, we have one meeting, the Marketing Leadership Meeting, which will be with committee chairs and co-chairs, so please stay on. And again, as another reminder, you'll hear me a few more times, Senator Rob Portman is on Tuesday, March 9th at noon, not Monday, March 8th. Everybody have a great week. Our meeting is adjourned.